results are in for the Magnolia County Executive Special Election, and with 95% of the vote, Charles Chuckles King has been elected to complete the remainder of this term. Mr. King's election victory is not surprising considering he ran unopposed, and that lack of opposition and an unusual voting day led to historically low voter turnout, with only 25% of eligible voters casting ballots. Still, in his victory speech, Mr. King discussed having a mandate to fight sprawl and encroachment into rural areas and forests. An urban growth boundary for Bend is said to be his #1 priority. Stay tuned to WSUP for more information about this and other important stories.
James turns off the TV. He can't help but think about an article that he read recently in the Spotlight that discussed the major rental crisis occurring across the county. Housing is needed, and if they can't build out, they're going to have to fill in and build up. And though the wounds are still fresh from the Hidden Brook debacle, he knows that he has to talk with Jamila as soon as he can. James explains that the hill behind their house has been listed for years, but it's never been all that desirable because of the challenging terrain. Why build on a hill when you could easily build on flat fields? But with this new growth boundary, that dynamic will shift, and this land will become incredibly valuable. Though the sting of Hidden Brook still lingers, she knows that James can't put his life on hold forever, and he has to make some sort of a comeback. And ultimately, she's thankful that he laid out all of his cards on the table and had an open and honest dialogue with her about the project. She says that she's on board, and they quickly purchase the land together. As they survey their purchase, Jamila can't help but be in awe of the view, and jokingly suggests that maybe they should save a lot for themselves. James says that they should, and suggests a large lot by the park. That's where they're going to build their new house. So in this episode, we're going to tame the hills of Bend. We're going to bend the terrain to our will and create brand new developable land. We'll also infill along University and Main Street and redevelop a bit of downtown Bend. And stay tuned till the end, because I'm going to make a few fixes based on your feedback in the previous episode. And if you're excited that we're going to make the topography respect us, hit the like button. And if you personally avoid building on hills, hit the like button for that too, and let me know what you do down in the comments. Or leave an emoji letting me know what you do for the sake of engagement. And without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hello and welcome back to Bend here in Magnolia County. We've got an exciting episode today where we're going to be taking on a challenging build, attempting to build along the hillside right here on this hill that's been undeveloped, and along University and Main Street, all of which are fairly significant slopes. So when you take out a build like this, I think it's great to take some real world inspiration, so I looked for a place that had development much like this. So right here we have a picture of Hercules, California in 1939. It is about 10 miles north of Berkeley, California in the San Francisco Bay Area. But the reason why I'm looking at this is because we have aerial photography from 1939, before any significant residential development occurred in the area. We're going to fast forward about 40 years to 1987, where you can start to see some of this development taking form. Now, I want to zero in right here. You can see that there are individual lots that are graded and roads that are already in place. Now, this is really important because as we're building today, I really think we need to think about what's happening here in Hercules. You can see every individual home site. You can see foundations, and you can see that these are all flat. We're going to want to do that today as we build on the hillside as well. Fast forwarding to 1993, and you can see that almost this entire area is built out. And if you fast forward to February of this year, you can see that because of all the rains California's had, it is green and it looks great. But here's the thing I really want to point out. You can tell as we go back and forth between 2024 and 1939 that this was not a flat area to build in at all. They respected the topography, however, they created their own as well by grading, and that is something that we're going to have to really focus on in today's build. So the very first thing I want to do is take a look at our contour lines, and you can see that it is very challenging terrain. Now my idea is that I think we want to have a parallel block behind the Jones house, use a little bit of eminent domain or maybe a land purchase for one of these homes. We're going to send a road right up here and have it go right behind these blocks. So this is where we'll begin our ascent up the hill. We're going to do something that's not necessarily the height of realism, but knowing that the next update will allow us to move some of these sub-buildings, we'll replace it without the sub-buildings and wait for the next update to replace those. And then we're going to switch back around right here. I don't want to get too close to Main. I don't want to encroach because we are going to be building right here. So we want to make sure that we've got enough space for buildings along Main Street. Then we'll come back around and then connect right back up with this road over here. So kind of a horseshoe. And then I also want a connection right here into the roundabout at University. So let's begin. And I think we've got to start out by eliminating this crematorium. And everyone loves that. And then we'll add that right back. Nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see here. We're going to be using very small brush sizes today and trying to be very deliberate with our grading. The first thing I want to do is fix whatever this little hole into the upside down is. We didn't see that. And now think about where that next block is going to go. So I'm going to grab a height that seems to be a good compromise between this low area right here and the higher area over here, and pretend that we're pushing dirt around. So right here, grab this contour line, which looks like 133 meters, and we'll pull this up. And then I'm going to grab a lower height as well, maybe 126 meters, and we'll flatten those out. And I'm going to extend that at a much smaller brush size into the hillside right here. And we will create lots both above and below this. But for right now, my main priority is sloping up to this. And then I mentioned having another connection to Couillard Street right here. So I'm going to D-zone a home. And then you can see right here, this is 6 units back. We're going to try to get this to be 6 units back up here as well. And that will give us our maximum block depth right there. So we will maintain that for the most part right here. Actually, it looks like it's a bit narrower. So maybe we won't worry. Maybe we'll pull that in a little bit. We can grab a height here and slope up to it. And then I'm going to extend that out to the other side of the hill as well. Now, for this next height, I want to find somewhere in between University, which is 162 meters, and this lower height right here, which is 138 meters. So we'll say that this 148 is a nice compromise, and I'm going to flatten out right here. This will be our road elevation. And I'm going to use the slope terrain tool, right mouse click up here, and then we'll draw ourselves a path. Now for this one, I'm going to use the continuous tool, and I have to make sure that I have snap to existing geometry on, and I probably want to turn off snap to guidelines because it doesn't really matter. What really matters is trying to follow that path that I just made, which isn't super obvious, but if I hit it just right, it's going to look really good. And you can tell that I hit it right because the contour lines are fairly spread out right here, which also means that we should be able to create nice lots off from here. Now up here, what we're going to do is again, go with our 60, and I want to flatten. So we grab the road height and pull that back and push it back. So we're grabbing soil from here, pushing it over here. And now we need to figure out where this road is going. And here's where we start to do a lot of filling. And I'm going to flatten a pad right here. Now I need to find a way to get this road to snake down to here. And I'll have the road go right about here. So we have that little stub. I'm going to slope to this. This is the high point. This is actually 151 meters. So it's a little bit higher than this. And again, really small brush, right mouse click up here at the high point. I want to make sure that we're leaving ourselves enough width for all of these lots. Okay, so now we can see where we can't encroach. So with our continuous tool, snapping onto this, we know that as long as we don't overlap that hillside right there, that cliff's edge, it's going to look just fine. And now there are 2 connections that I know that I want to make. One is going to be right here with this road. This is currently a gigantic cul-de-sac. Not a huge fan of that. Let's go ahead. We see that this is 142 right here, 151. And if you're wondering where the heights are coming from, I will leave a link to this mod in the video description. It is outstanding. Okay, and I'm pretty pleased with the way that this has turned out. Obviously, there is a little bit of work that we could do here. So we're just going to go into our road services and quickly upgrade this to be a key wall. And that does 2 things for us. It prevents zoning that we may not want, and it gives us a nice clean look if we dig it out a little bit, which we are going to do. Now I want that connection up to Maple and University, so we're going to make that now. But before we do that, I am going to add our building pads right here. And this is relatively level right here, so I just kind of go along this whole area. And then we will slope up to this area with a road. And there we go. Now, you can see right here where we have some issues with some of our building pads, where maybe we are going to have buildings going off the edge if we zone too far. Now, one of the things that I think is really unfortunate is that I can't actually have the zoning grid on with the contour lines. I hope that gets added at some point in the future, but right now I can at least click back and forth and kind of see. And then there are areas like this where, again, I said we don't want to encroach, so we're going to grade right away for Main Street. Now, for the most part, I think that as you do additional terraforming like this, you're going to want to really think about the types of buildings that are going to be appropriate. If you're going to have single family homes, they better be really tight against one another, because this is a very expensive area. They probably end up being very expensive homes down the line as a result of this. If you're building along Main Street, and let's say the city is adding a whole bunch of fill right here to make this possible, maybe have more density than you would otherwise have. And I'm just paying attention. I don't want to go up the hillside at all. I'm trying to leave space to grade. And you can see that there's about 2 units that I can grade things out right here. And then right here, we're going to leave at least 1 unit. But I also want to zero in on one thing. You can see that this is where things bump up. So that is another lot. And as we start to see those changes in elevation, we're going to leave some space. And I might even go with some of our beachfront properties right here to try to give them, I guess, a more expensive feel. And right here, I'm not super excited to have zoning on Alyssa Street, so we'll disable that. And then if I have to, I'm not afraid to clone. Whoa, I haven't done that before. I wanted to clone the lot, not the crane. Now, the crane's the last thing I want. I guess we'll have to wait for it to spawn in. Anyway, we'll come over here and keep working our way up. And again, North American beachfront for these. I don't want it to look Mediterranean. That's why I'm not going for the European. And I think that if you're watching from Europe, you're probably debating me at whether that's Mediterranean or not at all. Maybe it's more Balkan. Hard to say. Leave your thoughts about that in the comments. Now, right here, if we play our cards right, we should be able to get some lots on the corner right here. So what I think I'll do is, you see that this could be a decent sized lot if we were to grade. So we will do that. And I'm going to try one more. I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to grab one right here as well. And then another one more right here. Now, as we get right here, it's relatively flat, and I just want to make sure that we can smooth the cliffside off. We could probably get away with 5 units deep here. Right here, we've got to start taking that back. We'll go back 3. Now we're going to zone up here, but in the intro, we talked about how James and Jamila are going to have a lot near the park for themselves. So I want to choose a lot that has an excellent view. This oftentimes happens with developers, and you'll end up with a super-sized lot. I think that this is a very desirable lot, except for the traffic that you see right here. So if we do this, we've got to leave a big buffer for landscaping. So let's get their house placed, and we're going to be using a signature building, the Film Actors Mansion. And this will actually provide an additional 4 well-being for everyone within 1 kilometer of the building. So that's a nice bonus. So we are going to place that right here. I'm not going to grade. I think it'll do the work for us. Now we are going to have the potential in most other places to have development above these buildings. So we're going to be grading up here as well. But we're going to say that in this particular area, that's not going to happen. And we're going to rebuild a portion of this trail as well. There we go. Clearly much more grading to do in this area, but that is a good start. We're going to fill in the rest of these areas though. So let's go ahead and we will go hard once more because this is relatively flat. And looking at this corner right here, I do think that we can sneak some development in. So we're going to, and then we'll round things out over here. So what I'm thinking that we're going to do here is have row homes up the side here. Couple of reasons for that. I think that row homes are going to conform to the terrain really well with minimal effort. So what we'll try to do is I've done a real basic slope right here. I'm going to right mouse click up and down this and just slope from the road back about 2 units, maybe 3 units. So we've got a little bit of a backyard. And then we'll have a nice variety of row homes on here just to make it feel like we've got a couple of different developments going on. We'll go with one medium density building right here and do something like that. Now, one thing that I like about this area is we've already got high quality transit service. So it would seem like this area could support some development that doesn't have as much parking and is relatively dense. So we will roll with that right here. Now, right here, again, we've got the park. I don't think we want to encroach upon the park all that much, but we'll have a few homes along the hillside. They'll be smaller. And I think we'll end it right here and kind of leave the entry into the park unimpeded. So these folks have these really special lots that back right up to the park. But right here, it has a clear vista right into it. So with that, we've got most of our zoning for this area within James' neighborhood developed anyway. And what I want to do is spend a little bit of time trying to fix the grading. So part of that is going to be leveling right here so we get that nice crisp retaining wall. And I'm going to slope from one end right here to the other. And the whole reason I'm doing that is so that this isn't overwhelming. And then I'm going to turn the brush strength down and the size to be, I want to keep a unit in between the backyard and the road so we get a nice slope. And we're going to have to just be patient here. If you take off the contours, you can see what we're working with right now. And I think that this looks pretty good and fairly natural. I want to switch our attention to over here. And again, we want to maintain that approximate 6 units separation either side. This one I think is going to be a cul-de-sac for now. We don't want anything at the end, and we're not going to put a roundabout or anything like that because we've got this power line right here, which would be a bit of an impediment. So let's go ahead. We'll find the area that we're going to join, which is going to be right about here. This is 170 meters. I want to find 170-ish over here, and we'll slope to this location. Let's just make sure that we're nice and tidy right here. I think for the most part, we're good. And now we'll just load it up with zoning. All these homes are going to be about 3 to 4 units deep. And there we go. This area is filled in, and this one's going to be much simpler to figure out. I just want to soften the edges a little bit, not all that much. And that right there should, for the most part, do the trick. A little bit of oddness right here that happens sometimes. Just got to keep redoing it until you are happy. And I'm gonna be happy with that. Now, this road is not gonna end. It's going to extend somewhere, but sometimes you'll see these stub roads like this where you can tell that there's clearly intent for it to do something else, but the developer didn't acquire the lands, or there's some impediment to development, and that's what we're gonna experience right here. And maybe that impediment is that we've gotta find a way down, but for now, that's not a part of the game plan. We've got this little area right here as well. This is going to be the last bit on the hillside that I want to focus on. And once again, I'm going to pull this out. We'll get our 2 units. We'll do the exact same thing right here. And then we'll slope from the top height to the lower height. And there we go. Just got a nice little mix right there for the row homes. Right here, we haven't fixed the slopes yet, and obviously you wouldn't want people walking out their row home to a pretty unfortunate fall. So I think that we are going to need to clean that up a bit, and we'll give them another unit back here. And for all of these, I think that one thing that's really helpful is to think about these as lots and not just assets. So if you do that and you think about the space that would be required around the building, you start to give it more land and make it look a bit more reasonable. Now, these areas that I've left behind it, one thing that I was thinking might unify this area would be to have some pedestrian facilities back here to make this feel like it's maybe a part of a greater and grander development. And that right there is the ultimate payoff. Now there is an easy walk to the elementary school. And we've got some developable land right here. We may do something with that a little bit later on in the episode as well. But you can see it gives all of these properties very nice access. We'll do the exact same thing on the other side. And it just provides a nice off-street facility, even if it's not super necessary. I want to finish these lots out as well, so we'll grade back a little ways. Okay, and I've probably spent way more time on this little path than I should have, but I think it's really important both to frame this area out a bit, give these row homes a backyard, provide a bit of safety considering that's a really steep slope right there, and then tie these areas together so you could cross the street and get back and forth between these two areas. So I'm really digging that. And now with our hillside development complete, let's move on to a bit of urban infill. There are 2 different components to the urban infill development. The first is going to be development along University Avenue and Main Street. And though this hasn't been developed in the past, it's still infill because we're going to be adding in new development in an area that's built up all the way around it. The second half will be actually redeveloping portions of downtown. In particular, the first 3 blocks back from the water. I want to increase density and consolidate properties and come up with some bigger properties that fit the area well. So let's begin along University Avenue. And I once again want to take a look at our terrain heights, and we are going to do a little bit of smoothing. And I'm just going to grab the level terrain tool and pull it out from University Avenue to attempt to get at least 2 units of buildable space. And over on this portion of University, I think I can get even more, so I'm going to go harder. We're just going to have to be very careful because I don't want to encroach too much. So now let's add some new properties here, and I want to go back and forth between this view and this one because I should be able to see where I'm able to add properties in. So I'm going to go maximum medium density right here. I don't want to go any harder. Maybe 1 low rent housing unit, but that's about it. And there we go. You might be wondering why I'm not using mixed use right here. And I just find that these don't look all that great if it's just one of them, and they're all way too big. Once again, I think we're going to go, I have 1 large medium density building right here, a smaller one right here, and then mostly row homes. We're going to do something very similar over here, though I think it would make sense to attempt maybe 1 mixed use building through here. Okay, and we can start to see this area filling out now. You know, the mixed use building, you can kind of see the problem I have with it now. It's got that blank wall. It's a wall-to-wall building, and we're not treating it as such. I'm going to do something. I'm going to pause it momentarily and try to shuffle the buildings around. This is a medium density building. I just want to pull it up nice and tight here. And then these seem out of scale. Our commercial buildings, even at high density, end up being fairly small, which I think is appropriate. What I'm going to do is do a little switcheroo right here. And we'll move that here. Now, we did get this really tall, low rent building. I'm not convinced that that was a good idea. So we will call a bit of a mulligan on this. And we'll try some European medium density housing instead, and some European row homes. Now, I'm going to move on from here over to this portion of Main Street. And we really can't do a lot here because the lots aren't very deep. So I think row homes are as best as we can do. Now, unfortunately, we're going to take out a whole bunch of these trees. Those were planted years ago at this point, but it's something that I think we have to do if we're going to be able to develop anything in this area. I am going to add just a couple of targeted European medium density buildings. I think we can get away with just a couple. And then right here along Short Street, we didn't have any development. Now, it might seem to make sense to continue the single family homes that we already have right here. But as we're opening this up to development, we are going to increase the density. And here is where I think we may take that idea of having the low rent housing and maybe apply that over here instead. I actually want to front this on Main. So we'll disable the zoning right here, get that zoning on Main, grade things out, and then we'll add our low rent housing. Now, this is a great location for this because we've got lots of city services right here. Lots of people would want to live right here, lots of transit right here. It just makes a ton of sense from that regard. It's also a very busy corridor, so the land values would presumably be a little bit depressed as a result. Now, along here, I'm going to step the densities down because we have low density residential on either side. And there we go. A little frustrating to see these high rent icons, but there's not much that we can do about it right now. Let's switch gears and begin redeveloping the downtown a bit. And we're going to be eliminating all of the single family homes along Riverbend Boulevard. Now, interestingly, in reality, this would be a really difficult area to redevelop because of the number of property owners along Riverbend Boulevard. Just imagine that there's one stick in the mud who doesn't want to see the redevelopment occur, and as a result, purchases one of the properties and attempts to hold onto it. That can sometimes happen simply to halt development. So in these scenarios, sometimes cities will quietly acquire property so they can consolidate it into larger parcels. And this can also be helpful because it can give a city a greater degree of authority over what gets built in those areas. Zoning codes generally dictate the types of development that occur in a broad sense, so it can be commercial. However, specifying a specific user, that's illegal. However, if the city owns the parcels and they'll only sell to someone who's willing to develop that specific type of use, that is not illegal. Also, consolidating these parcels would allow larger users to build, and presumably those larger uses would generate more tax revenue, so it's a win for the city there as well. And in this particular case, we're going to say that they are going to grab these properties and want to see a large residential building. So we're going to build the Polaris Suites over here and then have more smaller scale residential row homes, maybe some medium density right along here. But this will be our first signature building in downtown Bend. This building provides for additional well-being within 1 kilometer. So this should make everyone in downtown very happy. And I think that this is going to be really, this is kind of where I would expect to see this kind of development. You got nice water views of the university. Maybe you're a professor and you're able to take transit over to the university from this location. Now, this is going to lead to redevelopment of other properties in the area as well. And what I think we're going to do is grab some of this medium density once again and try to have something that complements this building well. And then we've still got strong commercial demand, so we are going to add in some larger commercial buildings, understanding that these are not going to overwhelm or dominate. I'd love to add in some high density residential. I am a bit concerned though, if we go with North American, it's going to be crazy tall. And you can see this is easily one of the tallest buildings in the city if we do that. I'm going to try European and see if that works better for us. And look at the scale of that. That is much more manageable. So even though this is not a European build, I think there's a place for this. And the place is right here. Now I've packed these buildings in pretty tight right here along the coast, with the idea being that this land is some of the most valuable land in the entire county at this standpoint. So we've got a little bit of everything. We've got offices, we've got commercial, we've got low rent housing, a good mix of uses right over here. Now right here, again, want to start to taper down. And we've got to remember that this is going to be a bridge eventually. So I don't want to go too far because I have a feeling we'd have to use eminent domain on some of these properties to be able to build that bridge. So what I think we'll do is give 1 unit separation here and then go a few units down, and then we're going to stop and say that this is not buildable right here. And there we go. Now I want to continue to extend this density out onto Main Street because we've got some real low density buildings here. But I think one of the things to keep in mind when you're redeveloping is not to eliminate everything. It's so tempting to just eliminate everything. The other thing I want to make sure that we're avoiding is changing the use all that much, because I could see it being fairly easy to say we're going to increase the density in this area and much more challenging to wholesale change the use. And things are starting to look good, but there's a few things that I think we could improve. This area right here, for whatever reason, feels like there's too much density to me. So what I think we're going to do is increase the separation here and call a little bit of a mulligan on those buildings. The other thing I want to do is increase the density here. Now, the main reason I wanted to do this is it felt like that step between these two properties was way too high. The other thing is shadows. So when you have these small buildings, they'll be completely drowned out by the shadows of this taller building, which is fine, but also not ideal. And if you were planning for this area brand new, I think you wouldn't want to do that. This isn't a dense enough community to make that something that you'd expect to see a ton here. And you're already seeing some of it. We've got this new residential building that ended up being a bit taller than I had hoped, and it is casting some pretty severe shadows onto Main Street. So this is another one that, I think we're going to call a little bit of a mulligan. I think one of my biggest hopes down the line is that we have the ability to completely adjust the heights of buildings, or we have such a variety of buildings that we can basically find the appropriate heights for a location. But I would love the ability to say that right here, we can have 10-story buildings. Over here, we can have between 10 and 15 or whatever. Not something that we can do right now. But if you're willing to call a couple of mulligans, you can make some really special things happen. That's what we're attempting to do right here. For the most part, though, you can see that the density seems to logically taper now. We didn't eliminate everything. We've still got some low-density buildings mixed in here, some stullaways, some folks that maybe didn't want to sell their properties just yet, and that's completely fine. Those exist in downtown areas. In fact, when I lived in Denver in the downtown area, my house, which was a condo, was right next to a single-family home, and just a little bit down the block from that, there was a very major apartment complex, multiple stories, all existing on one block, doing just fine together. And that's the exact same thing that we're going to try to create right here. Or that's what we've tried to create anyway. I think it turned out okay. And I think that these two new buildings are a much more appropriate scale. And you can tell that this new European building is going to be just about like that. I'm going to add some paths. I'm trying to make sure that we've got lots of path connections so that people can get off the street and to these paths that are behind all the buildings. And while this is building out, there's one more location, not exactly right down here, that I want to focus on, and that's going to be right here next to the school. We talked about this a little bit ago, and for this one, I'm going to check the terrain heights. It looks like it's relatively flat. We'll go with one larger, medium density European building. And then a bit of parking here because we are a little bit further away from all the action. And then some more row homes. And I think that's going to round that area out pretty nicely. And we can see that the building that we got over here, this nice pastel blue residential building, seems to fit the scale of this area quite nicely. And as a result of lowering the densities here, the Polaris building, the Polaris Suites, which was really the core focus of this little area right here, looks like the biggest building, feels like it's the most important building in this area, and that's what we wanted. And now with our infill complete, let's move on to a bit of landscaping and detailing. For our landscaping and detailing today, there are a few things I want to focus on. For our single family homes up here, I want to refer back to those images of Hercules, California, back in 87 and 2024, and think about how we had individual lots. We're going to try our best to create individual lots by adding fencing and some of our grass surfaces. At our park, I want to make sure that we are adding some park amenities. So we might add a dog park and maybe a playground to this area and add a few more paths through here. We're going to want to make sure that at the Jones house, we actually name it. And then I just want to make sure that this feels very private. We're going to spread out some of these buildings so that it feels like the lot spacing makes a little bit more sense. And again, add some of that fencing. I think we may also adjust this area a little bit now that we have our surface tools. We didn't have those when we built this. And now that we do, I think it's time to revisit some of these older areas in town and redo the landscaping. So we are going to take that on as well. And then as we make our way to this area right here, I want to make sure that the landscaping is consistent. So you can see that we've got really intricate landscaping in our older areas. And then in the areas that we just built today, looks pretty bad. So we'll have to clean that up, add some trees, add some bushes, make it feel really good. And then of course, make sure that areas like this where maybe we missed a little bit of grading, we fix it up. So I'm going to begin over here and we'll make our way all the way around. And that was a lot of landscaping and detailing, but it's even more than you just saw. You might notice it is fall right now, and I've decided to do a little bit of off-camera work, and it's become fall as a result. I've basically gone ahead to every single thing that we built today and really fine-tuned things. So where fences didn't line up, I used Move It to make sure that they did, made sure that every single lot has a tree on it, tried to make sure that there's a little bit of personality with each one of these homes, and I really think that it's turned out well. I've also decided to adjust the surfaces on things like this area to make sure that we actually have lots, and you can kind of see where the lot lines would be. I've added some of the surfaces right here as well to make this feel like a cohesive and complete development. And truthfully, I really like the way that it's turned out. You can see I've done that right here as well. There is a backyard and a lot line, and the rest of this is park. It's a field and it makes a lot of sense. The other thing that I've decided to do is add some street trees. So you can see that we've got street trees on half of these. We've got parking on one half, street trees on the other, so that it starts to feel like there's a canopy over some of these streets. And then the other thing that I've done is I realized that I was inadvertently planting a whole bunch of wildflowers through here. And I always think that looks a little bit strange. So I've removed most of those. We've got some scrub bushes and really dense, both deciduous and evergreen landscaping, so that at some point when this all grows up, it's going to feel like there is a neighborhood set in a forest, which is kind of the vibe that I was going for. And now with our landscaping and detailing done, there's only one more thing left to do. That's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. Now let's make a couple of fixes based on your feedback. And in the previous episode, I asked you guys all for a name for this new neighborhood, and the name that you guys all thought was the best and that I love myself comes from Andrew, who says that this neighborhood should be called Johnson's Grove, but the residents call it Sugar Grove because of all the sugar maples that are here, and it bothers Sheila to this day. So I love that idea. Let's do it. And as a dig at the former governor, we're going to put the actual name of the neighborhood in parentheses. So that is a great suggestion. Love that one, Andrew. Now, there were two names that I loved. Astro gave this amazing name that was a throwback to Old Bluffside Crossing. And I've got to tell you, this neighborhood is on a bluff. There is a crossing of these two roads, and we've got to do something to honor Bluffside Crossing. So here's my idea. I'm going to extend Linden out a little bit further so we get two different names right here. We're going to take this street. We'll make that crossing street, and this will be Bluffside Street. That's what the couple will be. I absolutely love that. Hopefully that works for you, Astro. Thank you so much. That was a great idea. Next up, we have a suggestion that I absolutely adore. This one comes from Chicken, who suggests that for the chicane here on Bluffside Street, we should actually get the real chicane look by using the replace tool. And I didn't even think to do this. I can't believe that I didn't. But we should be able to just basically grab the road right here, use the replace tool, and actually shift the road a little bit. So I'm going to turn off all the snapping options. We have anarchy on so we don't inadvertently ruin the buildings. And then I can actually shift this back and forth. And this does a couple of things for me. One of the things that I know there was a lot of comments about was how it seemed like there was way too much capacity right here, really wide road, and people didn't love that. They wanted to know why I would do that. They assume it's just because I'm an American urban planner and this is what we love. It's not that. It's that I think that we need to preserve capacity in this area for the future because this is likely going to be a neighborhood that becomes more dense over time. And we don't have any 4-unit wide roads that have only 2 lanes. So this is about the best that we can do right now. That said, by adding the chicane, we can slow down traffic, and this is a legitimate chicane now, and I'm really excited about that. And there we go. You can kind of see what it's supposed to be doing. Now you come up here, you've got to pay attention because presumably there'll be some parked cars here. That would be the design anyway. And either the car just had to dive over, they'd be slowing down as they do that. That is exactly what we want to happen. That right there is traffic calming. We can actually do it in city skylines too, which is really, really exciting. And the last bit of feedback comes from Bryce, but honestly, it came from a number of people in the comments. The branding, though it's redundant, it's hard to see, it does make some of the buildings look more realistic, and it does seem a little bit generic to have some of these buildings without any branding. So we are going to restore the branding, and to do that, we've got to go back into the options menu, find the Better Bulldozer mod, and then we are going to deselect this option right here, automatically remove branding objects and advertisements, and it's going to hang for a moment, and that's fine. Then click restore branding objects, and it's going to add them all. And now presumably those are all back. You can see that it looks like, yeah, we've got it on the side right there for some reason. We've got them right here. All of the buildings have the branding. You know what? I agree, guys. I do think it looks a ton better with that, so I appreciate that suggestion. And then the very last thing that I've done is I've taken a little chunk of downtown and created a new neighborhood. This is now called Bend Hills. It is basically everything that we worked on today within the Hillside area. That said, if you got a better name for this, please drop it in the comments below. This is a good sized neighborhood. We got about 1,157 residents. And I say about, but that's the exact number. And we've got a lot of dogs. So this is clearly a neighborhood that loves their pooches, which is why we added a dog park. So very, very good. And the other thing I'd like a little bit of feedback on is all of the grass surfaces that I used. So I basically went the exact opposite as I've done in the previous episode and tried to use the grass surfaces to show where development has occurred. And I'm very curious to know how you guys feel about this. If you like it, if you think that it doesn't look good and I should go back to not including that, let me know down in the comments below. But I think for now, we're going to leave it here, and I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. I've really enjoyed bringing it to you. If you did like it, please consider hitting the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. I just want to let you know what a privilege it is to be able to bring these videos to you. I've had a lot of fun putting this video together in particular, and the last one kind of feels like I'm able to get back into my previous building style, and it's an absolute joy to be able to do this. So thank you so much for watching, and I really can't wait to see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.